This is about a book again. This is about Edwin Abbott's Flatland. And obviously, I'm going to tell you some important information. I'm just going to read from the AI. AI works great for book help. Like, they must have loaded all the books in AI because everything comes out pretty good. Maybe there's a little attitude skewed, but that's the reader, too. Anyway, in Edwin Abbott's Flatland, social order dictates that all male polygons must have equal length sides, because if sides were unequal, the angles would be unequal, making social classification based on sharp angles impossible. Regular shapes allow citizens to identify class by looking at the angles, whereas unequal sides would necessitate a tedious physical contact to determine shape, causing chaos. The law of nature in flatland is enforced by the state and requires that all sides of the polygon are equal. The sharpness of the vertex angle is crucial for identifying social status, which requires all sides to be equal. If all sides were not equal, shapes would be irregular and angle estimation would be difficult. It's called Edwin Abbott's Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. Excuse me, from 1984. The narrator is a square, and he is imprisoned in the state prison or state asylum, sometimes referred to as a state institution. By the end of the novel, the square is incarcerated for treason, more specifically heresy, after returning from Spaceland, which was 3 dimensions, and he's trying to spread the truth about these higher dimensions. The high priest, or the chief circle, inspects the state prison annually and visits the square, who's held in solitary confinement, and the high priest quizzes him, asking, "Why was I any better?" referring to his sanity and belief in higher dimensions, and the square is unable to convince his fellow inhabitants of the truth, and he's held there to keep social order, as his revelations are considered dangerous by the ruling class. Flatland females are starkly different from males. Females are depicted as thin lines rather than polygon shapes. They are deemed dangerous due to their sharp ends, subjecting them to strict, humiliating regulations, including mandatory peace cries, restrictive social laws. Males are males are polygons, triangles, squares, pentagons. When viewed from the side, women are nearly invisible because they're a straight line, making them deadly to others who might walk into them. The narrator portrays women poorly, but males can increase their social status by gaining sides and angles over generations. People with diseases causing a sudden movement like epilepsy are instantly destroyed. Women must constantly make a peace cry when out in public to announce their presence. They're forbidden from being educated. The very disturbing scene was probably in chapter 10, the chromatic. Oh, maybe not. Hold on, this is a chromatic sedition. This is an event where the lower class polygons, isosceles triangles, demand the right to use color to improve social status, leading to mass violence. The ruling circles violently suppresses the rebellion, banning the color and enforcing strict social hierarchy. The Universal Color Bill was proposed, allowing all shapes to use color. The lower class sought to use color to blend in with the higher class. The movement was led by the chromatides. It caused chaos. Military class, which was the isosceles triangles, supported the color, resulting in 23 circles dying in domestic disputes. The state physicians are tasked with managing social order by curing the irregular shapes, often through forced specialized care in state hospitals. These institutions act as honorable confinement for rebellious, low standard shapes, maintaining rigid social hierarchy. Oh, yeah, the circular neo-therapeutic gymnasium, where parents submit sacrifices. That was circular neo-therapeutic gymnasium. They were placed in this labyrinth before they attained a month old. Irregulars are shapes whose sides and angles were not equal, and it violated the society's strict hierarchical laws of geometric regularity. Irregularity was viewed as a dangerous social disease, and beings are either destroyed at birth or cured through surgery. Regular polygons represent elite stable. Irregular polygons are seen as mentally or morally impaired, representing threats to the state. Some irregulars are intelligent and makes them dangerous agitators or leaders of rebellion. Here's a direct passage. I am insulting the intelligence of my readers. Oops, I lost it. Come on. I am insulting the intelligence of my readers by accumulating details which must be patent to everyone who enjoys the advantages of the residence in Spaceland. Obviously, the measurements of a single angle would no longer be sufficient under such portent circumstances. One's whole life would be taken up in feeling or surveying the perimeter of one's acquaintances. Already, the difficulties of avoiding a collision in a crowd are enough to tax the sagacity of a well-educated square, but if no one could calculate the regularity of a single figure in the company, all would be chaos and confusion, and the slightest panic would cause serious injuries if there happened to be any women or soldiers present, perhaps a considerable loss of life. Expediency therefore confers with the nature in stamping the seal of its approval upon regularity of confirmation, nor has the law been backward in seconding their efforts. Irregularity of figure means with us the same as more. Any combination of moral obliquity, criminality with you is treated accordingly. There are not wanting, it is true, some promulgators of paradoxes who maintain that there is no necessary connection between geometrical and moral irregularity. The irregular, they say, is from his birth, scouted by his own parents, derided by his brothers and sisters, neglected by domestics, scorned and suspected by society, and excluded from all posts of responsibility, trust, and useful activity. His movement is jealousy, watched by the police until he comes of age and presents himself for inspections. Then he's either destroyed, if he is found to exceed the marginal deviation, or else immured in the government office as a clerk of the seventh class, prevented from marriage, forced to drudge an uninteresting occupation, miserable stipend, obliged to live and board at the office, and to take his vacation under close supervision. What a wonder that human nature, even at its best and purest, is embittered and perverted by such surroundings. All this very plausible reasoning does not convince me, and it has not convinced the wisest of our statesmen that our ancestors erred in laying down it as an axiom of policy, and the toleration of irregularity is incompatible with the safety of the state. Doubtless, the life of an irregular is hard, but the interests of the greater number require that it shall be hard. If a man with a triangular front and a polygon back were allowed to exist and to propagate a still more irregular posterity, what would become of the arts of life? Are the houses and doors and churches in Flatland to be altered in order to accommodate such monsters? Are our ticket collectors to be required to measure every man's perimeter before they allow him to enter a theater or take his place in a lecture room? Is an irregular to be exempted from the militia? And if not, how is he to be prevented from carrying desolation into the ranks of his comrades? What irresistible temptations to fraudulent impostors must needs beset such a creature? How easy for him to enter the shop with his polygonal front foremost, and in order to obtain goods and order goods at any extent from a confiding tradesman. Let the advocates of a falsely called philanthropy plead as they may for the abrogation of the irregular penal laws. I, for my part, have never known an irregular who was not also what nature evidently intended him to be, an irregular misanthropist, and up to the limits of his power, a perpetrator of all manner of mischief. Let's see what's more. At this point, I think we hear some of our better educators' readers exclaim, how could you in Flatland know anything about angles, degrees, or minutes? We can see an angle because we are in the region of space. We can see two straight lines inclined to one another, but you, who can see nothing but a straight line at a time, or at all events, only a number of bits of straight lines, all in a straight line. How can you even discern any angle, much less register angles of different size? I answer as though we cannot see angles, we infer them with great precision. Flatland is a mathematical novella which compares the two-dimensional world, Flatland, with three-dimensional Spaceland. There's rigid hierarchical based on the sides. There's also line land. Line land is line segments. They have no concept of up or side. Line land has a king. The king of line land cannot comprehend a second dimension. Flatland is two dimensions. There's no sunlight or shade. So depth is perceived through the fog. Flatland, the shapes are flat. They're flat like a shadow, so a shadow's not going to cast another shadow, I guess. They're flat. Three dimensions, they comprehend height over breadth. The spheres, cones, and cubes live in Spaceland. In Flatland is where you find the triangles, squares, and pentagons. And line lines are just lines. Spaceland has, volume, solids, well, shapes. There's a criminal class in Flatland. They are dangerous, marginalized segment. The criminal class include the Isosceles triangles, which is the lowest class. Isosceles triangles are often associated with very acute angles, dangers to the state. There's irregular figures, sides that are not equal, is often the cause of criminals. Individuals are sometimes destroyed or reformed into regular figures through state intervention. The state, led by circular polygonal classes, manages the class through strict measures, including confinement in state hospitals and forcing them into labor, outright execution. The criminal class is presented as a superfluity of low-level figures. The chromatic sedition is the universal color bill conflict. The criminal class of the Isosceles were involved in to spread widespread anarchy before being repressed by the aristocratic classes. The The protagonist is a square who's imprisoned for treason after attempting to spread the truth about three-dimensional space. He's in jailed for 7 years, preaching about the third dimension. He's seen as a dangerous subversion by the ruling circle priesthood. Alright, I think that's all I got on Flatland.